Peace, peace, family. How is everybody doing? It is your sister girl, Morgan Renee Myers, tuning in with y'all for another live reading. I'm on my Instagram and my Facebook account today. I just felt led. I've had this book, been meaning to read it, never got around to it. You know how sometimes when, you acting out and you know better, and you need to do better, and you don't be doing better, and so you avoid certain things, you avoid certain conversations and stuff. That's kind of where I've been at with it. So I've been new, I needed and wanted to read this book. It's called Chemical Dependency and the African American Counseling Strategies and Community Issues by Peter Bell. And so I don't know, I just felt led. If you've on my Facebook page, you've been seeing me kind of post all morning just different stuff about, do we trust doctors? A lot of people are saying no. So if we don't trust doctors, how are we getting our care? How are we taking care of ourselves? How are we getting checkups? So what are some alternatives? So some people have mentioned some practice like is it Ayurvedic practices, different things that are practiced more commonly in the Eastern hemispheres, over in India and things like that, across the seas. And just I've been detoxing this week. I always feel like I'm detoxing, just trying to really shift my diet and being more conscious and things like that. And so and then just seeing and hearing about people going through sicknesses and what they have to deal with, what they're dealing with in the doctor's offices and with these bills and all the things that come with being sick. So I just really want to be healthy and wealthy. And also I understand that it could be challenging. Like, we're addicted, our taste buds, we're addicted to certain things. You may not like movement or working out or what. At least for me, I'll speak for me. I know I'll start working out and then I'll stop because I be hurting so bad. I have to take Epsom salt baths every day. I'm sick of it. So I just stop. But that's not benefiting me. That's not helping me get stronger. That's not helping me on my journal for longevity and health and wealth. So sometimes we just got to do what we got to do, right? So Spirit is telling me it's time to pick up this book. Stop procrastinating. So here we go. Chemical Dependency and the African American Counseling Strategies and Community Issues by Peter Bell. And I like to read everything at the beginning if I can. So I'm going to read the content. So here's a preface. Then chapter 1 is talking about theories of addiction and their cultural relevance. Chapter 2 is called Culture's Impact on the Incidence of Alcohol and Other Drug Abuse. Chapter 3 is called The Impact of Drug Abuse on the Black Community. Chapter 4, Community-Based Program Issues and Solutions. I love a good solution. Don't just talk to me about the problem. What can we do about it? Chapter 5 is Clinical Issues in Working with Black Chemically Dependent People. All right, so let's hop to it. The preface starts off as so. The history of racism in America has left many white people hesitant to acknowledge or address cultural issues. Denial of differences in black and white cultures is common, and this dilemma weakens the effectiveness of chemical dependency services offered to blacks. Okay? Hey, y'all. Peace to everybody tuning in. Appreciate y'all. It does sound like a good read, don't it? And the thing with this, I ain't even read it, but I already know. I can tell by how it's starting off. It's not much different than a lot of these other texts. Where a lot of other writers and doctors or former doctors of the system that are now holistic doctors, it's not saying anything we don't know, y'all. We don't need books and doctors to tell us that we don't need to be consuming a whole bunch of sugary snacks and sodas and processed foods and stuff with dyes and things that you can't pronounce. We know in our spirit. And if you are tuned in and you pay attention to your body, you know which things specifically make your skin react in certain ways or make you get sluggish or make you have low energy. We know. So what we got to do is cut the crap, stop lying to ourselves. And if we really say we love ourselves, because on this internet, honey, on my platform, especially on Facebook, in my group, The Exchange, and all of that, we stay talking about relationship and what other people should be doing and treating us and da-da-da. And half the time, we're not treating ourselves the best, okay? We don't love ourselves as much as we say we do. Yeah, getting glitz and glam and having nice bathtubs. And didn't I tell you I was going to be on live? And you was going to act right. I did, didn't I? Okay. Getting all glitz and glam and doing all of that. Okay, I'm not saying that that's not important and do that, feel good, but also How are we really treating and loving ourselves, okay? And I done had to check myself, because I do this whole self-love and this and that, and you can really get caught up in somebody's lifestyle, what they appear to be. You would think I'm really on my I've been messing up all the time. But I address the issue, and I just keep doing better. I just keep trying to do better each day. Bows and frocks. I can't see. Bows, frocks, and breeches. Okay. The biggest issue is weaning off that stuff. Yes. And so even our language, we have to, watch that. Like saying hard and trying. I know I said try a few times in this video. But yes, it is an issue trying to wean off. It definitely is. But we got to think of our why. We got to keep the big vision in mind, and we have to find alternative substitutes. I'm not saying cold turkey everything, because you'll probably crash, but find some alternatives, find some new things, and build a new relationship with new things. We're so caught up in eating some of the same things, and we just get used to it. Like, let's expand the horizons of our palate. Also, you have to get a good detox in. The reason it's hard to wean off of stuff is because your parasites and all of that is what's craving all of this stuff. So you have to wean yourself off. Okay, let me see. Hold on, y'all. Do you know any spiritual people with a marriage license? Wow, that was a random question. People think I know everything, everybody. All right, back to the book. I'm going to start over, and I'm going to stop talking in between, hopefully. The history of racism in America has left many white people hesitant to acknowledge or address cultural issues. Denial of differences in black and white cultures is common, and this dilemma weakens the effectiveness of chemical dependency services offered to blacks. This booklet is an attempt to bridge that gap, to highlight cultural issues that are of great significance to blacks, and to relate these issues to chemical dependency. This booklet will focus on the need for increased cultural awareness by practitioners in the chemical dependency field and in other human services in order to maximize effectiveness in working with chemically dependent blacks and their families. Most of the information is based on my observations from having worked in the chemical dependency treatment field for over a decade. The audience for this discussion is all people in the field of chemical dependency and mental health treatment, black leaders, human service professionals, students, and policymakers. Okay, the definition of chemical dependency I have used is chemical dependency is an emotional and family illness that may be genetically based. Peace and blessings, good brother Duce. Is that how you say your name, Brother Hunter? It is a primary, progressive, pathological, and love-trust relationship with any mood-altering chemical. It results in substantial and repeated interference in one or more major areas of a person's life. That person's ability to function physically or mentally is often impaired. Chemical dependency can be most successfully diagnosed and treated when we take into account the cultural context in which the chemical abuse and the dependency developed. Much of the work in this booklet was drawn from my experience as an executive director of the Institute on Black Chemical Abuse for 15 years. I acknowledge Jimmy Evans and Boyd Sam Moore for providing me with valuable insight and guidance in looking at intracultural counseling. I also acknowledge Donna Peterson for her editing and critical analysis of this work. Finally, I want to thank my wife Sharon and my two children Jessica and Brian for this work. Alright, so let's get into it. Chapter 1, Theories of Addiction and Their Cultural Relevance. There is little serious debate on the question of whether cultural affects alcohol and other drug abuse. The real questions are how and to what extent. There are three major factors that appear to determine whether a person becomes chemically dependent. 1, the addictive potential of the chemical of choice. So I guess if you got weed versus coke, probably going to get more addicted than one that's more strong or more potent. 2, environmental conditions, where a person lives and was raised. If I was born in the suburbs, had private schooling versus being born in the hood, where there's a convenience store on every corner, and I see and have nothing but relationships with drug dealers and all of that in my area, I'm likely probably going to get caught up in some shit. 3, genetic predisposition to alcohol and other drug abuse. If alcoholism and drug abuse runs in your family and you come through that lineage, or you was born a crack baby, more than likely you're going to have issues with struggling with these dependencies. So the addictive potential of the chemical of choice, environmental conditions, genetic predisposition. A person's chances of becoming chemically dependent can result either from the overwhelming presence of one of these three factors, or most likely with all three factors working in tandem. The following three examples illustrate this point. So number one, people may come from supportive families with no family history of addiction, experience no significant peer pressure, and be well adjusted emotionally. Nevertheless, when these people use a highly addictive substance such as crack, they run a high risk of becoming dependent on the drug. The addictive potential of the chemical is the paramount factor in this case. 2. Some people come from neighborhoods filled with drugs, have few emotional coping skills, and have significant peer pressure to use drugs. These people may have no prior family history of addiction, yet when they use marijuana or another drug with a low addictive potential, they may become dependent on it. And 3, a third group of people may have come from an environment where they have limited exposure to drugs, experience little peer pressure to use drugs, have adequate emotional coping skills, but they may have a genetic predisposition for addiction. These people may become instantly addicted to whatever chemical they use. So those of you that just joined in, I'm reading a book called Chemical Dependency and the African American Counseling Strategies and Community Issues. And it was just talking about 3 ways that, or major factors that could determine whether somebody become chemically dependent. And then it gave some examples. So the addictive potential of the chemical of choice, how strong is this drug, environmental conditions where you live, and your genetic predisposition to the drug. So the addictive potential of a particular chemical is, for the most part, outside cultural considerations, though the culture can certainly affect the pace at which the addiction progresses. Genetic predisposition to addiction is an idea that is subject to scrutiny by Black and other minority communities. There is a fear that the concept of a genetic predisposition opens the door to racist notions of the superiority of one race over another. The aspect of addiction that has a major cultural considerations is the one pertaining to environmental issues. Theoretically, if you change people's environments, establish clear community values regarding alcohol and other drug use, de-glamorize the drug and crime lifestyle, and of course, strengthen the family units, you could substantially reduce their risk of drug use, abuse, and dependency. 2 theories of addiction. Currently, alcohol and other drug abuse services generally subscribe to one of 2 main theories on addiction. One is the disease theory, and 2 is the environmental secondary theory. So now I'm about to go into what the disease theory is. The disease theory. Adherents to the disease theory, which has been formally postulated as a theory, believe that chemically dependent people can use mood-altering chemicals. As an example, disease theorists point to the failed attempts of individuals to return to social drinking after chemical dependency treatment. Okay, I can see how that would be difficult. The disease theory is prevalent in the field of chemical dependency treatment. It is the basis of Alcoholics Anonymous and most third-party payer private inpatient and outpatient abstinence-based treatment programs. The disease theory is closely linked to the theory of genetic predisposition to alcohol and other drug addiction. The environmental secondary theory. Although less formally postulated than the disease theory and more verbally discussed than seen in print, the environmentally secondary theory appears to have greater support among minorities than among white people. This is because this theory is more responsive to cultural issues. The main distinction between the 2 theories relates to the cause of addiction, which is relatively unimportant in treatment based on the disease theory. An adherent to the disease theory may agree that the environment could be a causal factor in addiction, but that would not necessarily change the method of treatment. And for a counselor to tell a client, don't be condemned with why you became an addict or alcoholic, only be concerned with your recovery. Persons who adhere to the environmental secondary theory of addiction always look for the underlying causes, family instability, crime, unemployment, and feel that these are primary and that the addiction is secondary. The approach to therapy often addresses those issues. If they can be resolved according to those who support this theory, the addict or alcoholic will be cured. Proponents of the environmental secondary theory do not subscribe to the principle of cross-addiction. They believe, for example, that a cocaine addict may be able to drink responsibly. Criticism of the disease theory. Historically, the disease theory has received more acceptance in the white community than in the black community. While there are both supporters and critics of the disease theory in the black community, there is far less consensus that the disease theory is the right one. The concern of many minorities regarding the disease theory is that adherents to this theory often do not acknowledge or address issues of cultural differences. References to or discussions about cultural issues by clients can be viewed by counselors whose work is based on the disease theory as excuses or cop-outs. Some counselors seem to fear that acknowledging cultural differences would negatively empower clients, who will then reject the rest of the treatment program as not relevant to their lives or personal situations. When a black or other minority client raises an issue relating to culture, that person may be dismissed with one of the following cliches. We are here to talk about our disease. Chemical dependency is a democratic illness affecting all groups of people. Stop trying to be unique. We all have the same feelings. We all have the same illness. I treat everyone the same. You are just using race as an excuse to avoid treatment or to continue using drugs. Treatment based on the disease theory needs to develop a mechanism to allow chemically dependent individuals to talk about racial identity issues and cultural differences while not allowing those differences to be used as an excuse to avoid treatment or to cop out. I agree. You want your voice to be heard and understand that these things are affecting why I'm on dope. But also, it's not an excuse not to get help. Okay, so criticism of the environmental secondary theory. The black community is somewhat resistant to the idea that addiction is primary and often views alcohol and other drug abuse as growing out of racism, poverty, or lack of opportunity. While it is clear that there are strong institutional, economic, and cultural roadblocks that impede recovery, it is hard to imagine an individual or cultural group making significant progress in addressing alcohol and other drug abuse while viewing it as only a secondary problem. While racism has had a devastating effect on the quality of life for blacks in America, it is difficult to make a strong factual case for racism as a major cause of addiction among black Americans or any other oppressed groups. If racism and oppression were primary factors in producing addiction, there would have been much more alcohol and other drug abuse among black Americans 50 to 75 years ago, when racism was more evident than it is today. Tragically, there is significantly more addiction today among black Americans than in previous years. Methadone treatment programs. I'm almost at the end. The environmental secondary theory of addiction can result in a non-abstinence approach, such as the use of methadone, which is often used as a treatment for heroin addicts. This treatment approach is much more likely to be used in minority communities. Methadone can be used for short detoxification period and is not inconsistent with the disease theory, but when it is used for maintenance and treatment over extended period of time, it runs contrary to the principle of cross-addiction due to the fact that a heroin addict has a high of the substances. This is a key axiom of the disease theory. Some of the critical questions being asked in the black community about methadone maintenance are as follows. Is it an appropriate role for the government to underwrite its citizens' addiction to any drug? Are clients using and abusing alcohol and any other drugs while on methadone? Does the existence of methadone serve as an incentive to addicts to start using heroin again because they always know there is a relatively painless way to come off their habit? In other words, does the withdrawal experience have a deterrent effect on an addict who considers using again? There are strong feelings among some people in the black community that if methadone has any role in treatment, it should be the exact opposite of its current one. One suggestion is that all prospective methadone clients must have 1, fail in a minimum of 2 drug-free programs, and 2, pass a NATCAN challenge. NATCAN is a chemical given to addicts to ensure that they have developed true tissue tolerance to an narcotic. Another consideration could be to eliminate the practice of an ongoing methadone maintenance program in favor of a rapid 14 to 21 day methadone-assisted detoxification program. We are likely to see a methadone maintenance programs in the because they serve as a form of social control. It is less necessary for methadone-dependent people to commit crimes in order to support their habit, since the drug is provided by clinics. Methadone increases the spread of AIDS, are relatively inexpensive. The primary issue for the chemical dependency treatment is the effectiveness of maintenance programs. The challenge for counselors. There is room in the disease theory to accommodate cultural differences. The problem is that many people in the field of chemical dependency treatment are only now becoming aware of the critical significance culture plays along racial minorities in recovery. The premise of this booklet is a statement made earlier and repeated here. Treatment based on the disease theory needs to develop a mechanism to allow chemically dependent individuals to talk about racial identity issues and cultural differences while not allowing those differences to be used as an excuse to avoid treatment or to cop out. If counselors and other staff in chemical dependency agencies are not familiar with and are not willing to discuss cultural issues, these issues can then be used as a cop-out by clients to avoid treatment. The answer lies in education. Counselors who understand cultural issues can then deal with them. They need to deny them out of lack of familiarity or ability to address them, but can assess them objectively and determine the extent to which they are real or used as a cop-out. The disease theory has much to recommend it. Other theories of addiction, such as the environmental secondary theory, appear to be gaining ground among racial minorities. Until the practitioners who adhere to the disease theory